If you were to ask me who's getting the short end of the stick in August of 2025, I would say absolutely the Russians. It's not that it's not hard for the Ukrainians. They're really having to pay on the battlefield. Both sides are engaged in very costly battles. That's not it. It's the drone warfare that has happened since the beginning of August 2025. That's the difference. And we'll talk about that. Please forgive my voice. I have, at the beginning of the semester, I usually get a little bit of a sore throat, and it's kind of have some congestion in my head as well. I am very sorry about that. I've been talking all summer, so I don't understand why it's doing this to me, but this tends to happen. Okay, so what has happened exactly overnight? Ukrainian drones have knocked out, now, over the last month, 17% of Russian oil refining capacity. And that was before yesterday with what they hit yesterday. So it's probably ticked up just a little bit, hitting 10 refineries and cutting about 1.1 million barrels of daily output. And that's going to hit Russia in the pocketbook. And this is really important because if they're hitting Russia in the pocketbook, that's where it matters to Russia. An explosion reportedly hit the Ryazan-Moscow oil pipeline on August 26, one of the key fuel supply routes to the Russian capital. The pipeline, repurposed in 2018 by Transneft to transport gasoline, also used by Russia's military, is now out of operation. So this is a big hit. The same pipeline that we're talking about here provides fuel for the Russian army. Transportation of oil products to Moscow has been halted. That's not the only thing that's happened here. This is Euromaidan Press, just came out about an hour ago. Frontline, Ukrainian drone strike 1,300 kilometers deep into Russia, torching depots in Tartastan. Tartastan, you'll know, for the drone production factories. And it wasn't just the factories. They're going after the sources as well. When the factory became too dangerous for staff, few technicians willing to work at Russia's largest Shahed assembly plant under Ukrainian strikes. So it's harder and harder to get people to want to work there. So here it is in Euromaidan Press on 26 August. The biggest news comes from Ukraine. Excuse me. Here, Ukrainian long-range drones have attacked and sunk a Russian cargo vessel carrying Iranian Shahed drones before they could unload. Well, okay, so Iran's down here, and they can just ship things down to or up the Caspian Sea to Russia. They hit it at the source in the port of the Caspian Sea, Port Olia. That's where they hit these Russian or Iranian Shahed drones. The attacks show that shipments can be destroyed even at their entry point, far from the front. Really, really important. The next strike hit the Primorsko-Antarask airfield in Krasnodar, a known launch site for Shaheds. And then Ukraine also struck the storage depots in Tartastan, over 1,300 kilometers from the border. So it's one thing after another. Russian outlets tried to minimize the impact, but Ukrainian intelligence confirmed that the large number of drones were destroyed before they could be moved forward. And that's great. I mean, this is exactly what the Ukrainians need to be doing to the Russians. And so now this is creating all the hitting the drones keeps Russia from hitting civilian targets at night, particularly. That's important. Hitting the oil refineries and the oil depots and the oil pipelines is causing this kind of problem. Russia's gasoline crisis continues, with some Russian-occupied areas in Ukraine now completely out of fuel. And that's not just in Ukraine. That's also happening in Russia. Russian oil revenues have dropped by 30%. Putin is losing billions due to EU sanctions. These funds are no longer available due to finance Russia's war machine, according to Kaja Kallas, the EU foreign policy chief. Sanctions against Russia shadow fleet cut oil transport revenues through the Baltic and Black Seas by 30% in 1 week. Okay, I mean, I hope that keeps going. Now, how much is that amount? This is just a little visualization. If this is $1 million, this is $100 million, and that's $1 billion. Right? And this whole thing is $1 trillion, but we don't need to worry about that. $1 billion is a lot of money, right? So how is Putin going to overcome this? Well, one of the ways is he's going to start knocking off oligarchs and taking their stuff and that sort of thing. But he just did this to Finland. Putin gave an ukaz, a presidential order which illegally transferred assets worth 30 billion euro from the Finnish corporation Fortum to Russian ownership. No compensation. Yeah. So it'll just be part of the state. And Okay, I'm sure there'll be some kind of protest, but there's not a lot that they can do. But this is not a sign that they're in a healthy condition. But that's what he'll do. He'll keep funding it to the degree that he can by stealing it from other corporations or oligarchs or what have you. Ukrainian General Staff has released photos of a previously unseen domestic produced drone, now confirmed to be in serial production. Judging by its size and nose design, it appears to be a middle strike loitering munition similar to the Israeli Harop. I've not seen these drones before, and I pay a lot of attention to this sort of thing. Okay, 95 drones last night sent by Russia to go after Ukrainian civilians. The Ukrainians shot down or suppressed 74 of them. 21 hit targets across 9 locations. Russian drone attack on Kherson this morning killed 1 woman and injured 2 others. Overnight strikes also targeted Sumy and Poltava. Sumy infrastructure was damaged. The local water utility lost power. Electricity was partially out. Here's Zelensky talking about what just happened. The restoration work continues in the Sumy region following the strikes by Russian drones. Nearly 100 UAVs targeted strikes at night against our region, specifically against civilian infrastructure. Wasn't Lavrov just saying the other day he doesn't go after civilians or civilian infrastructure just on Sunday on that news show? Remember I showed you that? Due to the attack, power outages occurred in the Poltava, Sumy, Chernihiv region. More than 100,000 households were left without electricity. There are casualties. All necessary assistance is being provided. The Dnipropetrovsk region was also under attack. Okay, turning our attention to the battlefield, 920 Russians off the battlefield, 1 tank, 45 artillery systems, 118 vehicles and fuel tanks. I'm not showing it to you here just for the sake of time, but Andrew Perpetua's list, a little worse for the Ukrainians than the Russians, but there's a lot of it on both sides, and that's what I'm talking about. It's not like nothing's happening here, or it's just a walk through the park. It's not easy on the battlefield. In the Покrovsk direction, it looks like Покrovsk is under control again, and like they've shored up the problems that they've had. The Russian invaders conducted 30 assaults. We look at that, and we look 30 assaults to 920. That's okay. That's about a medium range. If it was 40 assaults, you could start going toward a higher end for that number. But what's interesting here is Le Mans. I don't talk about Le Mans very often because Покrovsk is like the high water mark for the battlefield. Le Mans had 27 assaults yesterday, which was somewhat unusually high for that area. Okay, now I warned you about Russia's summer offensive coming. Putin had to do something, and it just kind of fizzled out. Russia's summer offensive in Ukraine collapsed with a loud crash. Most of Putin's goals fizzled out. Bild, military analyst, says that, look, Покrovsk was supposed to fall, but after a brief breakthrough in August, Russian troops were either killed or captured in 3 weeks. That's thanks to the Azov fighters that came in and took charge and made sure that they pushed people out. The plan for a 600-kilometer buffer zone in Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions failed. Remember that after Istanbul, where they were going to say, well, fine, if you don't come to the table, we'll just take another oblast. It didn't work out so well. Moscow controls less than 70 kilometers along the border. 70 kilometers isn't nothing, but that's not very big compared to what their threat was. In the south, Kherson and Zaporizhia, the front lines haven't moved. In 3 months, Russia gained 1,800 kilometers, about 0.3%. Is that like 3% of one, like not full 1% of Ukraine's territory, far from what Putin dreamed of. It's very, very small. Meanwhile, Ukraine keeps striking deep into Russia, knocking out 17% of refining capacity. Fuel is vanishing and prices are soaring. Soon they'll be riding horse carts. Yeah, it's something. Captured Russian POWs describe missions where only a handful survived after a breakthrough near Dobropilya and Donetsk. Ukraine's fighting back with tanks, drones, even robot weapons. I talked about that the other day. And retaking it is challenging, but it looks like they have it under control. This is hard to see, but this Russian infantryman confused the front and back ends of a grenade launcher and shot himself in the shoulder. And here you see the blast going behind him. Let's bump that up to here where you see him starting to get up to there. Yeah. And he got himself turned around and he's not feeling all that good after this. And on August 24th, 2025, in Donetsk, locals in the Kavitsky district are asking Pushlin, Denis Pushlin, the titular head of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, why there's still no emergency declared, especially with heating season ahead. They've been without water for a month, while an ice rink is about to open in the Donetsk City Mall. But they've been without water, and they need help. But the authorities don't particularly care. For the first time ever, China welcomes Ukraine's independence. We saw Zelensky saying thank you to a number of leaders recognizing their 34th Independence Day. China hadn't done it before, so that's a really interesting thing to observe. So just a couple other things. Estimated civilian deaths. And I've been chasing this down a little bit because Lavrov was saying, well, we never attack civilians. Where do you have this data? Well, here's some of the data. Estimated civilian death rate in selected conflicts. Rwanda is the highest, and Mariupol is the second highest. Like, we're going to find one of the reasons that the Russians, I think, don't feel like they could cede any territory, or like in Donetsk, Luhansk, those like in those oblasts, is because I think you're going to see a lot of tragic civilian casualties, mass graves and things like that on the other side. I don't know for sure, but it sure seems like from all the available data that I've seen. Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi met with UK Defence Chief Admiral Tony Radakin and his successor, Sir Richard Knighton. Highlighting the strong military partnership between Ukraine and the UK, Syrskyi awarded Radakin the Cross of Merit for his role in arming Ukraine ahead of the full-scale invasion. Trump likes to take victory laps, but it wasn't Trump alone. And it is true that Trump did provide some weapons that were helpful. So, I mean, give him those props for having done that. I don't know that he wanted to or, had any great desire to, but he did actually, in fact, and so did the British. So Zelensky also met with Radakin and Sir Richard Knighton. We discussed the further support for Ukraine, the situation at the front lines, needs for our warriors, and the delivery of necessary weapons, and funding for Ukraine drone production and joint projects. We also spoke about diplomatic efforts to end the war and achieve a real lasting peace. Now, Zelensky's been at this for 160 some odd days now since Trump said the ceasefire thing. Like, let's have a ceasefire. Sure, we'll agree to a ceasefire, and then we'll talk through whatever. 160 some odd days. I don't know exactly how much it is. I've lost kind of track of it. But meanwhile, in a cabinet meeting, Witkoff was saying this. Let's listen.
And there's only one thing I wish for, that Nobel Committee finally gets its act together and realizes that you are the single finest candidate since the this Nobel Award was ever talked about to receive that reward. Beyond your success is game-changing out in the world today. And I hope everybody one day wakes up and realizes that.
Okay, so somebody posted this comment, Nobel Committee should give the award to Zelensky. Wouldn't that be something? Like, Zelensky actually, in the middle of trying to defend his land, is advocating for a ceasefire. Like, that would be something. Just a thought. Okay. Miss Ola attended all prisoner exchanges, hoping that her son, Yevgeny, a Marine who has been in captivity since April of 2022, would return. Finally, on August 24th, Miss Ola was able to hug her son. She always brought Vishkvana Vanka. I know what it is. It's a shirt, but I don't know how, if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The Ukrainian embroidered shirt to the exchanges with her son. Yevgeny put it on as soon as he stepped off the bus and saw his mom. Well, I couldn't be happier for her for being able to see her son, having come that long for that many times and been disappointed and disappointed and disappointed. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.